have a chat or ask a question, our team, Joy, Jordan, and Holly, are managing all of the questions in the chats. And hopefully we have time to, unmute a few people and break open a conversation and answer some questions as well. Just a little bit to share for those of you joining about Mike. He's an American play-by-play sports commentator for the NBA, and he's the lead announcer for the New York Knicks. On top of which, I think his most notable thing is that he's one of our club members, and we're so thankful about that.
Cheers.
So, cheers to that.
Cheers.
And Tim is in his 25th season of handling the play-by-play duties for the Golden State Warriors. He has, I think you were telling us, Tim, it's 31st year of working with the NBA. He broadcasts on the club's flagship station, 95.7, The Game. So we're really thrilled to have you, and we can't wait to host you personally at the winery one day soon. So welcome, gentlemen.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. Before we get started, what wine did you choose to open up today, Mike, of all your 1111?
I have a 2017 Cab right over my shoulder here.
Beautiful.
We're trying to decide which I like better, the Cab or the Pinot, but I went with the Cab tonight.
Oh, awesome. Kirk, you want to share a little bit about that Cabernet that he's drinking?
Yeah, so Mike, you've got the Lockheed's Vineyard Cab, but before that, which Pinot do you prefer? We make two of them. Which one are you a fan of? Both, or one the Kalesa Vineyard or the Bacigalupi?
I'm not just saying this to curry favor with the winemakers and the owners, but I love both of them. I mean, it's hard to pick, and I'm mostly a Cab. I prefer Cabs normally, but I absolutely love both Pinots.
Oh, thank you very much. That's a real, those are special wines, those Pinot Noirs. We get them from very, very good sites from great growers. And so those are a pleasure to make. Brett and I really get our heads around how we're going to, form those wines together well before they arrive. So the 17 Cab that you've got is the Lockheed's, and that is aged in about 95% new French oak. It's that's a beautiful wine. From the vineyard age, Aurelian is about 20 years old, I think, or 18 or 20 years old, maybe 17. It's in the high teens anyway. So, but it's right there on El Centro from the Lockheed Vineyard, and that's a consistent vineyard, been a very consistent vineyard. We've got our first handle on that in 2012, and it's been a great vineyard ever since. And if we get the right conditions and the right growing season, it makes musical wines. It's fantastic.
It certainly is.
Enjoy that. Thank you.
That's awesome. Tim, what about you? What did you choose to open up today to drink?
It's kind of an overcast day here in Northern California. It's not super warm, so I wanted to go with the 2017 Pinot, the Bacigalupi Vineyard Pinot, and it seems to sort of fit the day.
Oh, Brett, you want to add a little story or some of your favorite things?
Yeah, I mean, that's actually one of my favorite wines that we make. It's that's out on the Russian River, so it's a cooler area, but it comes from a kind of a warmer part of the Russian River. So that Pinot we ferment. We'll ferment a large tonnage of that in small little 1.5 ton bins, and we'll have that split over 8 or 9 different bins. And each fermentation that we have contributes a little bit of a different character to that wine specifically, which I think adds a ton of character to that wine when we're able to press it out and barrel it down. It doesn't see a lot of new oak. New oak on Pinot tends to kind of mask the beautiful fruit that we dearly enjoy. So it gets a low percentage of new oak in about 18 months, and then we put it to bottle. It's there's spice, there's earth character, a hint of new oak, a little bit of sweetness from the barrel, but a lot of beautiful fruit comes from that vineyard. And like I said, it's one of my favorite that we make here at 1111.
Ellie, can I ask Brett a question about it?
Absolutely.
So Brett, I'm sure a lot of us, if not all of us, have seen the movie Sideways. And there's that speech where the young Giamatti makes about the Pinot grape. Of course, he's the son of a former commissioner of Major League Baseball, by the way, Bart Giamatti.
Yeah.
But so what is it about that grape? Why is that grape one that seems to have such a wide, hit or miss type of range?
It's very site specific. There are places that you can't grow Pinot Noir.
Okay.
It takes a very specific climate, a very specific soil, and you've got to be very diligent in the vineyard as well as in the winery when you're handling that grape. Later in the season, if it catches a hot spell, temperatures creep up towards the end of the growing season, the canopy can fall apart. The grapes can raisin. So it's very important that our timing in the vineyard is exact in terms of pick dates. And then the same thing when we bring it into the winery. You've got to be, it's a thin-skinned grape. There's not a ton of color in the Pinot Noir grape just in general. So we've got to handle it really gently to get kind of the expression that we're looking for from the vineyard and from the grape itself. So it's a very different way of making wine when you're dealing with Pinot Noir.
Well, you handled this one beautifully. It's wonderful.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah, I've heard about wine pairing with food, but Tim, you're the first I've heard wine pairing with the weather. I like that.
It's kind of a different kind of a day, so I figured, okay, let's go with a Pinot today. So,
It's a great wine for a cloudy day.
yeah.
You know, the other thing too, Tim, about this Pinot that Kirk feels strong about is we age it in French barrels, and those barrels come from a very specific cooperage out in Burgundy. They've been there for essentially centuries, called Francois Frère. And so Kirk, loves doing that Pinot in those specific barrels because, you've got the climate, you've got the soil, you've got the sites, but you certainly also do have the barrel choice. And so that's something that, we look into when we do these wines, and Kirk loves fermenting and aging those Pinots in those Francois Frère French barrels, Burgundy barrels.
Cool.
True, yeah. The thing about Pinot Noir is that it's such an interpretive grape. There's, that when you say that, it reflects site so specifically. You can, like Brett says, it grows only, you can't grow it everywhere. Well, the fact is a grapevine will grow anywhere. It'll grow in the crack of your driveway. A grapevine will pop out of anything, really. But where it grows well is what we're after. There's a site and a varietal and the perfect thing for almost anything. If you've got, clay soils in a hot area, there's Zinfandel, or there's the Rhone varietals, or if it's, cool climate, there's the Alsatian German and the Burgundian varietals. And so matching terroir to the varietal is really such a key to unlocking expression in terroir. And then, like really interesting, we use Francois Frère barrels, one of my very favorites out of it's Saint-Romain in the area of Burgundy, and they are one of the leading producers of barrels today. They still treat it as a very handcrafted skill. It's they might crank out a number of barrels more than their competition, but they're very, very talented and have grown out of good reason. So. So our barrel choice is Francois Frère. We use a 4-year air dried, which is a very, very lengthy air drying process to try to leach the tannins out and really support the fruit in the wine, as it were. So not trying to drown the wine in oak. There's so many different ways you can destroy a wine's character, and oak is certainly one of those. So we try our best just to support the character, the essence of that fruit.
Hey, Brett and Kirk, question for you. I got a really long driveway. Can you guys come over and help me plant some food?
We'll send our bird. We'll send a bird over, Travis, to help you out with that. Okay, just get your hose out there and start cleaning up.
I do have 2 acres of Cabernet, Kurt. I need you to come over here and look at it.
Okay.
It's my first harvest.
Gladly, my man. Good
That's
to see you,
awesome.
Travis.
You know, just a little background for some people that don't know the story about 11/11 and how it came to be. So much of all these things that even everyone's talking about are serendipitous and kind of like it's staged out somewhere in the universe that things were supposed to happen the way they did. And you know, about 10 years ago, I met Aurelian on a serendipitous way on a flight coming from France to LA actually. And over the course of time, you know, we had made a great friendship and created some moments where we were brainstorming on entrepreneurial ventures and had a time where we sat down with Carol and came up with some different ideas. And the first idea that came to be was buying this property in Napa. And Carol was very excited about it. She had fond memories of her time going to Napa with her family. And so this was something that was just a lot of fun. And we thought it was going to be a great opportunity to develop these other real estate ventures, be it single family homes with an elegance to it. And with Carol, I've known Carol, she's a lifelong friend, over 30 years. So that dates me a little bit, but nonetheless, it's hard to imagine since I'm only 25, but, but nonetheless, you know, it's lifelong family friends of my parents and just a really great relationship that has blossomed into the business relationship as well. So we bought this property and it has a beautiful 3.5 acre Cabernet Sauvignon vineyard that envelops the house that is sitting there that we remodeled. Aurelian did a lot of that crafty work with his own 2 hands. So, which is pretty amazing. And then he runs into Kirk while he was in the Valley at a birthday party. And, you know, they started talking about what each, you know, what they're catching up essentially. What are you doing here? I thought you were in LA and so on and so forth. And next thing we know, we're sitting down with Kirk and having a whole conversation about taking this Cabernet vineyard and turning it into, you know, a wine. And I got to tell you, that was something that I was not comfortable, you know. I wasn't sure about it. I drank a lot of wine. I wasn't, you know, in the business of making it. But nonetheless, having such a great group of people and bringing on the team like we have with Brett and the hospitality team and Kirk coaching us along the way, we've created 11/11 and really have made some beautiful moments that I think really ties into the sports world. You know, growing up in a small town in Nebraska, I can relate to my high school years of playing some ball. So I did dig out some pictures and I won't show anybody. I'll spare you the, the Farrah Fawcett hairdos, but nonetheless, it was such a great time for, you know, not for only competition, but for bringing people together and, you know, bringing that whole nature of hard work. And that hard work of sports has really taken me through my life. And I've seen that with every person that kind of has their own thing, you know, Aurelian, it's tennis, you know, everybody kind of has their thing, whether it's joy with skiing, you know, or whatever the sport may be that is of your choice. So with that, I mean, I really think it's a beautiful tie-in to share a little bit about how are you guys feeling? You know, when you heard that in March, like the season's done for now, how are you, Mike? Why don't you share a little bit about how that affected you?
Well, we were on the air. Actually, I was doing a game in Atlanta, and in the first half, we were discussing about the Warriors were going to play a game without any fans, and Tim can talk about that. That was where thought we were going, that we were going to broadcast games with no fans. And then at halftime, we find out that one of the members of the Jazz, Rudy Gobert, tested positive. And now all of a sudden, as we start the third quarter, we find out the season has been postponed. And it was so jarring because you never expected that. We figured, a couple of weeks we'll play without fans and then we'll be back to normal. I was so distracted on the air that I apologized to the viewers. I said, I want to apologize to you. I'm so out of sorts. I never expected it. So it came out of nowhere, even though we were aware of the virus. But to have it come to the point where they're actually going to stop the games and you didn't know when it was going to continue, it was unbelievably jarring.
Yeah, it was kind of the same thing for me too, Ellie. I was actually on the air doing our weekly radio show because we had announced earlier that day that our next game against Brooklyn was going to be played without fans. So I'm introduced to our press conference from earlier in the day. We aired parts of that. I went to a commercial break, and for whatever reason, in my home office, I had the Utah-Oklahoma City game on, and all of a sudden, they were getting ready to tip off, but all of a sudden, the officials were talking with both coaches, and teams were going back into their locker rooms, and that looked really weird to me. And I had the sound off because I was doing my radio show, and so about seconds later, here comes the word down, the season's been suspended. And I was like Mike, I was in total shock. That last half hour of that show, I don't know what I said, but we somehow got through it. But it was a total stunner, and it was really a sobering reality to what we were dealing with. And I think it really, the first month away felt very weird to me, because it was, we look at the schedule and say, oh, we should be in Toronto today, and that's not going to happen, probably won't happen, at least for the Warriors anyway. But it was a little sobering. But now we're getting through it, and doing a lot of videos on platforms like this, and just trying to keep it going. I think what's going to happen in the end is that when we get going again, I think sports will be a very big part of the healing process in this country, because it's something that people enjoy and love to get into.
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. I know we're all missing it for sure. I think everyone has kind of tried to get a touch of that in the feel of it by turning their home gyms or garages into, what type of sports connection can we get? What do you guys hear from the teams out there? Like, how are some people practicing? Are they not practicing? How are people training? How are the guys training?
Well, they just opened up the training facilities just in the last couple of days, and they're very strict on how many can go in, at what point, what they can do with the coaches that are there. But it's a great sign that all 30 teams can now have their players come back and start practicing. They're desperate to finish the season, no matter what happens, even if it means going well into September and having a huge impact on next season. They really want to crown a champion. Obviously, they're not going to do anything unless they get the okay that it's going to be safety. I mean, that's still the number one priority. But they have so many different scenarios to finish the regular season and then the playoffs, to go right to the playoffs, to shorten the playoffs in terms of rounds. They have all these different scenarios depending on when they get the okay from the health people. But they are very optimistic right now of at least getting in the playoffs and be able to crown a champion at some point in 2020.
Oh, really? Is that really going to happen, you think?
Well, again, it's impossible to predict. Things change, obviously, from not just week to week, from day to day, but they really feel optimism about somehow managing to get it in. And again, as I said, with the opening of these practice facilities, that's a real positive sign.
On the Warriors front, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead, Tim.
Well, on the Warriors front, a lot of the guys have been working out at home. I know Draymond had challenged some of our coaches to like a Peloton morning challenge every day and doing that. Really, and I can tell you that Steph Curry did not have a basketball hoop at home. So he went out and got a hoop delivered and put it up himself. He said he had to get on a ladder to make sure the measurements were correct. He told us this in a meeting like this earlier this week for the Warriors. And he said that when he got to the rim and he was measuring the 10 feet, he goes, that's really fun because I don't really get up here this often. So it's kind of nice to be above the rim for once.
It's funny, you should have told him to come here at the winery because we have a basketball hoop. We do have a basketball signed by Steph.
There you go.
Picture of him. I had his shoes, so I could have challenged him to just like little, a few distancing hoop in the backyard of the winery. And as you can tell, we're very health conscious here at 1111. And one of the things that we've been able to do is to create a little gym inside the winery. So we have a little treadmill, a little rower, a couple of weights and things. And we've always got an inspiration of the Warriors in the background. Sorry if there's any fans out there that do not like the Warriors. I don't want to offend anybody. It's a little affinity here in the Bay Area as they.
Story behind that, really? How'd you get all that stuff?
Oh yeah, so we have a really good friend named Travis Stanley who by the way, yeah.
I'm
That
not a
is-
self-promoter at all. No.
That is
No,
beautiful.
I'll tell you what, that is very true. I will say that the way we came to meet both Tim and Mike are through making other moments with Travis, and Travis actually being such a good supporter and friend to 1111. So I was remiss in saying that in the beginning there, Trav. So thanks for the little tickler.
I work for wine. For anyone that has not had a chance to visit the winery, it is amazing. It's a beautiful place. It's one of Napa's best kept secrets. And I probably hosted 3 or 4 events there, and one of them was an event that Steph and Andre were kind enough to allow me to helicopter them in for. And they came, and we had a nice fundraiser for our foundation, and they were kind enough to not only give us the place, but paid a lot of money for that painting for the foundation. It went to a good cause. So thank you guys for being such great partners of the chamber.
Of course, yeah, it's been fantastic. I think we have a question though from Pete. So Joy's gonna tee him up so he can ask a question.
Yeah, thanks. Hey, Mike, it's great to hear your voice. I'm a Fordham grad here too, so it's good to see you and hear your voice. I've been missing it the last couple months. I'm wondering, from your perspective, which of the major team sports that have kind of taken this hiatus do you think is most likely to get back into action first? I know baseball's talking about it, but there's some concerns about the contractual piece of it. I mean, who do you think's most ready to get back in the game?
Well, I think, as you said, baseball, even though they're having some roadblocks right now, I think they'll probably be the first one back. Golf is actually starting in less than a month. They're going to have their first tournament, clearly different outside individual participants. But baseball is really shooting to have it. And for them to get it going, clearly with the weather a factor for them, they can't go too far into the fall. So, right now the proposal is a half a season. And I think they'll still be the first one. They'll overcome these things. And from what I'm hearing, that it's just stuff that has to be ironed out and negotiated, which is the normal part. By the way, what Fordham, Lincoln Center or Rose Hill campus?
Rose Hill, class of '87.
In the beautiful Bronx.
Beautiful Bronx, yeah. I'm supposed to ask you how Bill from White Plains is doing.
Bill from White Plains is doing fine. Bill from White Plains was a character that said inappropriate things when I was a regular on the Imus in the Morning program.
Fantastic. So I'm curious, Brett, what you decided to open up today, and maybe you have a question you want to ask of the
Yes.
Mike.
So Mike and I think the same. I'm drinking the 2017 Lackeys, and I got a question for Mike. If anybody watches NBA, I would assume that they would know Mike and the catchphrase "bang." I want to know where that came from, and can you remember the first game where you used that phrase?
Well, I wish I had some great story about it, but I don't. What it started when I was at Fordham, actually, as a fan. When we weren't broadcasting the games for the student radio station, we would go to the games and sit in the stands and cheer like crazy for our university. And when a Fordham player hit a big shot, I would yell "bang" in the stands as a fan. And when I was doing the games at the university, I'd think, let me try it. And I did it on the air a couple of times. And I didn't like it at first on the radio, so I kind of put it to the side. And then when I started doing TV, I started using it. And one of the reasons was because I try to use it at big moments when the crowd is going crazy. And I don't have one of those strong, booming voices that can overcome a loud crowd. So when it's a big call, I try and be as concise as possible. And "bang" being a one-syllable word is a pretty way of staying concise and not having to try to override the crowd when you're calling a game. And it seemed to work well in those instances. By the way, I wasn't the first to ever use it, and I didn't find this out till later. Johnny Most, for old basketball fans, he was a longtime radio announcer. Tim knows him well, a longtime radio announcer for the Boston Celtics, and he used it back in the day. But I promise I didn't steal it from him because I didn't know until after his son told me that he used it. But that's how it originated, and it's been a fun thing because it's easy to do when you're trying to make a call with a crowd going crazy.
Absolutely, I love it.
That's awesome. So Kirk, when you're making wine, what's your equivalent to bang that Mike says?
Oh.
Keep it clean, Kirk. Keep it clean.
Yeah. What would we do? We would, you know, there's so many expressions. I am trying to think of, you know, we say, you know, that's a drinker, you know, something like that. When you have that wow moment and you're impressed by a wine, and it's that's not how I remember it, and that's not, you know, that's like fantastic. But hey,
It's not fair. I put you on the spot. I put you on the spot. But
Brett and I will give ourselves looks, because usually there's wine in our mouths, but we'll give each other looks. So
Yeah.
there's more facial expression, I would say. Maybe we skip around a little bit or something.
I love it.
But, I
I
had a question for Mike. You know, other than basketball announcing, have you done any other announcing? I mean, you see this kind of crossover season to season with other things, but is basketball really your, you know, definitive frame, or do you guys get out there and do other things like cycling or sailing or, you know, golf, what have you?
Tim, why don't you take that first?
Well, for me, I've been really lucky. I've done just about everything you could name of. I started in a small station in upstate New York, and it was one of those stations where you had to do everything. We carried every sport imaginable. But when I moved to the Bay Area, that was, I think, a real important step for me, because I wanted to get to a top 5 market, and I got a chance to do major college football for Stanford. I did some Oakland A's baseball. I've done all kinds of stuff. The first thing I ever did was minor league hockey, of all things, way back in the day. But I've been fortunate. I've done everything from TV sportscast to talk shows to golf on radio to you know, whatever. I've done Canadian football, so I've had a long and checkered past, as some people might say.
Okay. Cool.
I did college football in the NFL for a while. In my one of my favorites was in 2002 in the Olympics in Salt Lake City for NBC. I did ski jumping. And, one thing I had to make sure the viewers didn't know, I had never been on skis in my life. And here I'm announcing ski jumping. But they put me with an analyst who was an Olympic ski jumper. He handled all the technical stuff. I just kind of handled the biographical stuff. And I actually found that really fascinating to do, because I went at it as a novice. I didn't know much about it, and I didn't try to pretend that on the air. So I almost did it as a viewer at home who doesn't know a lot about ski jumping. And I'd ask what to my analyst must have seemed like ridiculous, easy questions. But I think because I didn't know anything about the sport, it was enabled me to help the viewer learn that. So that was a fun experience. But I stopped doing all the other stuff because I have 3 children. They're all grown now and they're in their 20s. But at the time, I was away too much just during basketball season. So to do other things, I needed to be home and be a dad once in a while, as opposed to being on the road all the time.
That's awesome. So do you ski then, Mike?
No. That's going to get a big laugh from anybody in my family. I tried several times. I think the first time I put on skis, I was about 42, 43. It was an absolute disaster. So I've retired from professional skiing.
Well, you might next time just ski with Kirk and Brett. Those are 2 elite skiers. So next time you come to the Bay Area, let's try to do it in the winter. We'll go to Tahoe. Those guys will take you skiing. They'll teach you everything they know, because those guys know how to ski. I tell you what, they know how to make ski, but they certainly know how to ski.
You're pretty good yourself, Aurelian. But I think Mike and I, since I retired as well from skiing, we'll probably find ourselves at the bar drinking 11-11.
You're good at après.
I ski.
Exactly.
I had a follow-up question for Kirk and Brett.
All right, Travis.
As it relates to that bang moment, right? When the wine is in the production stages and you're tasting it, you probably have several bang moments along the way, right? But there's a time from that last taste before it goes in the bottle, and then you get your hands on that bottle. What is it still? Is that bang moments as you remember it? You know what I mean? Like, take us along that path.
Yeah, the lead up, you know, in the wine term, we call that the élevage, and the you know, the kind of the aging of wine. So it's really, and Brett may agree with me on this, because we see things a lot eye to eye and the same, which is makes a great team in the cellar. Same with Aurelian and Ellie. You know, as wine ages and goes down that path, you know, as winemakers, our greatest, you know, the greatest thing we can do is get the pick right. Setting up the vineyard, getting it all staged. It's like you're in a track meet and you're on the blocks and you get set, and when that gun goes off, you don't fault, you don't wait, you hit it perfect. And so that's kind of the takeoff, the starting line of a wine's life. So if we can get the pick right, meaning how does it taste, and we've walked the vineyards, we've done our diligence, and we've worked with the growers and communicated really well, everything's lined up, the barrel choice is nice, everything is working, that is where it's set. And then as winemakers, we just carry the wine as it will go, and it will have attitude, it will want to take a right turn or a left turn. And so as winemakers, you know, we need to give it some air. It's time for a racking. It's time to blend something else into this to kind of keep it going down a path. And so we build up, okay? We build up to this, everyone, as it were, to that aha moment, that bang and high-fiving. And typically, for me, that's after about a year in the bottle. I mean, we get it as good as it's going to be in-house with all the tools and every ounce of talent that we have, to that moment after 2 years of aging, let's say in Cabernet, or 14 months in Pinot, and we'll put it to bottle. And it's not across your fingers, but it's like, let's just see what this does. And then when we go back and we open a wine after a 12-month period or 48-month period, 4 years down the road, I mean, you just see how these wines evolve, and you think to yourself, that tastes great. You know, that is fantastic. You know, that's really worked out. You know, so I don't know if we ever have one single day of like, woo, you know, unless it's a nice wine score or something like that. But, you know, it'll be over time, I guess. I mean, ours is just a big, long roar over all these years of aging, I suppose.
So you're more like a coach than an announcer, then, trying to mold your team together to get it.
Yeah, absolutely. You do that. You gotta, yeah, and we're constantly at it. You know, Brett, give us your take on that.
Yeah, no, I think there's one big bang when you make that pick call and the fruit shows up and it tastes great and the chemistries are fantastic. And then it's just a big long string of like, yippee, we got it through fermentation. We got it pressed out. We got it in barrel. It's tasting great. And like Kirk said, I think, you know, the finale, the bang is when it's been in bottle and we can all sit down, put it in glass and enjoy what we've been nursing for, you know, 2 years. So it's a big bang up front, a bunch of yippies, and then a big bang hurrah at the end. So yeah.
I have the 16 like his vineyard, and that's a bang.
Yeah.
I think we have a question from Eris.
Hi, this is for Tim and Mike. So throughout NBA history, the way that you build a championship team was a core group of players that were drafted together, you know, had losses together, and then won a finals like the '91 Bulls. Do you think with the rise in player mobility and player empowerment, especially this offseason with stars going to all sorts of teams and forming duos, the way you build a championship team is going to be drastically different?
I'll go first. I think so. And I think what we're seeing now is it's going to be really curious to me to see what kind of chemistry, you know, comes together for these teams that build very quickly by moving a lot of players together. You know, one of the strengths of a long-running championship team is that continuity. It's that chemistry. You know, when the Warriors were having that, you know, run, Draymond knew what Andre was going to do. Andre knew where Clay wanted the ball. Steph knew how to get other people engaged. And so I think that's a big part of it. And I'm really curious to see if we have a lot of one and done champions, if the player movement continues to go back and forth so quickly, because I think it's going to be hard for teams to stay together the way they used to be. At least that's what it looks like, on the outside looking in for me.
Yeah, it really started to change a little more than 10 years ago. If you remember 2008, Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen joined Paul Pierce and they win a title. Obviously, LeBron James and Chris Bosh joining Dwayne Wade and they win a title. In terms of sustained excellence, the way the Warriors did it, that's the best way to do it in terms of build with young players. So you have them under a certain salary restriction for a number of years. You get their loyalty after a number of years. But the way it's the mobility and the changing now and superstars wanting to play with each other, and something that they talk about in the summer quite often, it's completely changed. So it doesn't need that 4 or 5 year period or the process as Philadelphia likes to talk about. You sign that one mega free agent like LeBron James with the Lakers, and all of a sudden your fortunes have turned.
And just for complete transparency, Aris, short for Aristotle, is my godson. So he is a lover of many sports and stats. So thank you, Aris, for that question.
Thank you for letting me ask it.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining in with your friend. I see he has a Warriors.
Chris Mullen, got to represent.
Very nice.
Awesome, guys. I love it. I think we have go ahead,
Trav. To with that name, Aristotle.
Yeah. No pressure. No pressure.
I think we have another question from Sonia, calling in from Napa.
I didn't know I was going to have to talk. Hi, guys. I'm just curious whether you guys think that fans are going to be able to attend games this year at all, whether it's basketball, baseball, or my personal favorite, football.
Well, Sonia, I think I'll just go with basketball because that's where I've talked to people who are kind of in the know of certain things. I don't think we're going to see fans this season. There's even talk that one of the reasons they're not afraid to push this season into September, late September, maybe even early October, is because they're thinking that they might not have fans in the stands until maybe January of 2021. Again, everything can change within a couple of weeks. It's so fluid in the way things are changing. But right now, that's what they're thinking, that this season with the NBA, they will not have fans, which is going to be, as Tim can address, this is going to be very interesting from a broadcasting standpoint to call a game without any fans in the stands. I've never done it, so I'm curious to see what it's going to be like.
Yeah, Sonia, it's gonna be tough. I think I was talking with my son the other day, and he works for Sac State football, and Cal State system just said they're going to online classes in the fall. And so how do you justify having a football team if you're not going to let students be in class? So I think this is going to be a different year. I think maybe if we do this again at this time next year, we'll have a much different outlook. But I'm with Mike on this in terms of we really don't know. We are moving into really uncharted territory.
And Mike and Tim, can you speak to, because that was the one thing that David Stern, who left us this past year, great impact on the world of sports. But one of the things that made the NBA so popular is it's such a fan-friendly sport. You're right on top of the game. The interaction with the fans and the players coming through the tunnel, all that stuff's going to probably go away. I can't imagine, even when you think about courtside seating and all of that, it's kind of hard to imagine how they're going to figure out a way to maintain that, that thing that put them up, that put those players, that made those players so marketable and so popular.
Travis, really is, it is what makes it such a special in-arena experience. But they just don't know. Again, anybody who's giving you predictions on, the fans will be back in November, the fans will be back in January, nobody knows. But there are so many brilliant people. This is the way I'm thinking, and maybe it's just because I'm trying to be optimistic about it. There are so many brilliant people out there right now working on this, not just the virus, but working on contingency plans for sporting events, whether it's football, basketball, and baseball. And they're going to come up with something to make it right. I firmly believe that. How long it takes, that's to be determined. But I do think there's so many bright people out there, so many brilliant people who are going to figure it out to get the fans back, where we'll have that same experience again. And I'm confident that will happen. When, I don't know, but I'm confident that will happen. And it needs to happen because, as we all know, it's fun to watch on TV. It's fun to listen to on the radio, but there's nothing like being at the arena when a game is going on. And that's what's made the NBA special.
Yeah, I
And
think
there's a part of me and there's a part of me, and again, Tim, you and Mike can chime in. There's a part of me that thinks that man I just mentioned, David Stern, who was so stubborn, would have tried to find a way. Being in the dog days of the season, go to the owners, we're not going to have fans, but we are going to continue to play the games because we're going to keep them on television. And we're going to find a way to show the rest of the world that we can continue to live our lives, whether it's just quarantining 12 guys, 3 coaches, a trainer, and surrounding them with a top-notch medical staff, and have this kind of barnstorming league and playing games where, they probably wouldn't typically be playing games just to keep the brand out in front of people. There's just a part of me that feels like he would have tried to figure out a way, even if it was just for a month,
Well, I think Mike and I talked about this the other day, that I think we're lucky in the sense, at least in the NBA, that we've had 2, I think, great commissioners. I think Adam Silver is a great commissioner, and I think he's going to figure it out. And I think that, when you had David Stern, as you point out, Travis, you knew he was going to find some way to do it. I think Adam Silver is going to find a way, but I think in this case, the experience will have to follow science. And that's the unfortunate thing. You have to follow, as we phase open in California, I think that's the way sports is going to be. I think it's going to go in phases.
Well, hey, I give Adam Silver credit for shutting down the country, because when the NBA made their decision to stop games, that's when everything kind of followed suit.
Absolutely.
Hey,
Well,
I've got a question real quick, guys. Not to shift gears too much, but it's kind of like going into your cellar and pulling out a 20-year-old Cabernet. Okay, so the teams, when I was in junior high, going into high school, was like in the late 80s. All right, so I wore number 50, Ralph Sampson, and I love that guy. I'm 6'4" and center. But those teams of Hardaway, Richmond, Tom Tolbert, and then a little bit later, Manute Bol and Chris Mullins. And just, in a pickup game, would that team of 88 or 89, who would win, them or the team of 18? 19?
Oh, wow.
I mean, those guys were great. They were fabulous.
This year's Warriors team or the one that went to the finals last year?
I think the finals last year.
Oh no, the finals team would win. They would just.
They would have killed them.
Yeah, they would win.
Oh, those guys were so good.
Just stop it. Stop it. You can't ask Tim that.
What would have been the spread, Tim? What's the spread on that?
It's a big spread. It's a very big spread. Yes. Those teams were fun to watch, and they had characters, and Nelly wearing fish ties, the sneakers on the sideline. But they had sort of the path of a meteor. It just kind of streaked through the sky there for a couple of years, and then it was gone.
Yeah.
What about the Bulls teams, Tim, versus the Bulls teams?
Yeah.
Well, I'll answer it like Steve Kerr answers it. If they play by the rules of the 90s, the Bulls have a pretty good chance. If they play by the rules today, I think the Warriors have a really good chance. Because it's just that, as we saw if you're watching that Last Dance thing, when you see those episodes with the Pistons, oh my goodness, you had to have a hard hat to drive to the basket on those guys.
Hey, Tim, you just mentioned Steve Kerr, and I think that's a great segue in kind of talking about why do you think the world of wine and the NBA have meshed really nicely together?
I think because players are more, they're broadening out now. They're using their platforms for other things. You guys had Andre to your establishment for an event. Andre's a guy that's using his platform to try to find out about tech companies and about different areas. So I think there's a better layer of sophistication now with today's players, and they see themselves a little bit more than just a basketball player, and I think that attracts them to wine. And I can tell you that there's always some wine on our flights, and that the players are as interested as the coaches. I want to say one thing about Steve Kerr while I have the floor here. He is one of the most remarkable people I've ever met, and he has this ability to communicate with everyone, from the ball boy to the official to his team, and he has this knack of finding the right tone. You know, when he's asked a question, whether it be about the game that night and or something happening, you know, thousands of miles away that doesn't have anything to do with the NBA, he has the right tone. He is a very a gracious man, and I think he's a very socially in tune man as well.
That's awesome. You know, it's been fun to see him in his youth and the documentary, The Last Dance. Have you guys, I'm sure you guys have all watched it, considering there just hasn't been the live sports. What has been your take on it? We'll start with you, Tim.
My take on it is that Michael Jordan might be the most competitive person that has ever graced the planet. And that scene the other night where he's watching Gary Payton's, you know, he could have thrown him a bone. Nope, not going to do it. He is just something else. And also I just think it was very eerily similar in tone and atmosphere to what the Warriors went through. And Steve Kerr kept saying that to us, that reminds him of that. And it had that same kind of feel to it.
Gary's been by the winery before, and I'm a Seattle fan. I'm a Sonics fan, so to see Gary Payton roll through here was like
the glove.
The glove, exactly.
I think, Al, it's been wonderful for the younger generation to see how great he is, because so many of the younger generation thinks the only great players are the ones born after 2000 or drafted after 2000. But for them to see it, and my 27-year-old daughter and my 23-year-old son, we've watched every episode together. And they don't really remember Jordan as a player, but they're getting a chance just to see how special he was and understand what myself and everybody else has been talking about. That's number one. The other thing is, and this really came out in the last two episodes, for what he was able to accomplish and the way he had to do it to accomplish, there's a price to pay. It's not an easy life. And I thought that it blew me away how he spoke so openly about how being Michael Jordan is not as easy as it seems. Granted, he has all the fame, he has all the money, but there was a price to pay, both with his relationships with his teammates and with his privacy, etc. I thought his emotions that he showed in the last couple of episodes were quite striking.
I agree. It's been amazing. I mean, I you know, like I said earlier, growing up in the Midwest, sports was pretty much the center, and especially in the middle of Nebraska, where outside of the Husker football team, I mean, for us, it was all out. You know, we were looking out west, and it's amazing, you know, having the different, you know, how basically it's the sports idols. You know, they're idols. People look up to them, and it's amazing to see the impact that a person can have based on a skill set that they can do. And I think through this whole COVID experience, you know, just kind of a shout out to the medical community and the nurses and the doctors. I think that it was really high time that those people got the recognition as well. It's almost like everything else died down, right? Entertainment, sports, the typical that's in the limelight, and these people were elevated to the front and center. And it's been pretty amazing to watch. Having family in the medical field, it's near and dear to my heart. So,
bam!
So
Bam!
Yeah. So
can
cheers.
I ask you a question?
Yeah. Go ahead. Who's up?
Yeah. So,
hi, this is Sarah. Sarah McQuilkin and Christopher Chin. And on that note, Ellie, I love what you said. I work for UCSF and just moved here from New York and worked for a while, Cornell Medicine there. And so, being really connected to that medical community has been really fascinating. And we actually just sent from UCSF a lot of our doctors and nurses to go help out in New York. And so my two worlds have kind of collided. And I think, one thing that I've been hearing from a lot of former coworkers in New York and a lot of the doctors and nurses here is, everybody's really looking for that connection. And I think, organizing events like this to bring people together, a lot of people are feeling really isolated and alone, and, organizing things like this that share, joy that everybody is looking for, and that positivity, which sports and wine, everybody's hungry for that now, and they will be when we get out of this. So I just wanted to say thank you, and all of the things that the people on this group are offering in terms of sports and wine and community. I think that's exactly what healthcare workers and all of us need right now.
Well, thank you so much. We really all toast to that for sure. Thank you so much for sharing your stories and for all that you're doing right now. Thank you, Sarah.
Cheers.
Cheers to you guys. You guys stay safe for sure. I think Joy, you said there was another question on the docket. Let's see.
I think it's what's the best game that Mike and Tim have ever commentated? Yeah.
Okay, really? And what was that question? What's
the best game that they've ever been part of that they had the chance and the opportunity to comment on or be commentators on?
Awesome.
You go first, Michael.
It's really hard to pick one. I always, when it comes down to it, I pick one that determined whether or not somebody won a championship or not. And for me, it may have been in 2013, the Ray Allen game in Game 6. The San Antonio Spurs were just about ready to defeat the Miami Heat. The game was over. They were up by 6 with like 30-something seconds to go. And Ray Allen hit a shot with 5 seconds to go in the game. If he misses that shot, the Spurs win the championship. LeBron James does not win his title with the Heat. And all of a sudden, all these narratives change. But he hits the shot, a shot that he'd been practiced his entire life, his entire career. That forced a Game 7, the Heat go on to win. That was probably the most exciting game that completely changed not only that particular finals, but it changed the narratives on a lot of players' careers as well.
Yeah, it's really difficult, but for me, I think it has to be Game 6 of the finals in 2015, just simply because it was the first time the Warriors had won a championship since 1975. And all I kept thinking about was, all these kids, all these young adults, all these people, the 75 team was their grandfather's team, was their dad's team and their mom's team. Now they had their team. And to get a chance to do that, the only regret I had about the game was that Bill King had passed away a couple of years before. And so he wasn't around to help celebrate that. But it was, I thought, a moment that the Bay Area was long overdue. It's always been a great NBA town. Even when we were god awful, we still got great crowds and intelligent crowds and loud crowds, and so to be a part of that and to have a chance to describe that has to be it.
You mean when I was there, Tim, right? When they were terrible?
Of course, when you were there, Trav. Yes.
Hey,
those are days I try to forget sometimes. So
I do have I have a best game that I've ever attended as well, if I may share a little story.
Sure.
You guys laugh a little bit. About 2 years ago, our very good friend Travis Stanley, yes again, got us ticket to go see the match. And we're standing in the bleachers, and like at halftime, they always turn on the music, and then there'd be videos of people dancing and so on. And I just don't know why I had a feeling that day I would just be on camera. So I just stood up. I was wearing my Warriors hat, and I started dancing. And the next thing you know, like I'm all over the board. I mean, like all the cameras and everything. We go backstage. Steve is like, "Yo, man, I saw you on the TV dancing." And I was just in front of me. And I bet you not, I'm not joking. about 2 weeks later, they were doing a recap of the Warriors game in France. And they played that video with me dancing because it was Upagamancha, woo, 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 woo. And so all my friends from France are like, we saw you on TV, what's going on? Anyways, so that was my best game, sorry.
Ellie, on that note, I'm going to have to take off, guys. Mike, Tim, thank you very much. Ellie, always a pleasure. Brett, Kirk.
Hey.
Thanks, Travis.
Hi, Travis.
Hey, Trav.
Hey, thanks, Travis. I think that is an amazing tone and a note to thank everybody. And most importantly, thank you, Tim and Mike, for sharing your stories and your knowledge and sharing this time with our wine. And we hope to see you soon so we can give you each a big hug in person and thank you. You guys stay safe and our best to your families. And if anybody is interested in 1111 Wines, the team is here to support you. And we do some local deliveries, and we also do curbside pickup. And we really appreciate all of our wine club members for hanging in with us and sharing all of their stories of making moments. And with that, I just want to just say thank you again to Tim and Mike, and we look forward to seeing you soon and hopefully, on the basketball courts.
Ellie, thank you so much. Thanks for the friendship and thanks for the wonderful wine. Thanks, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you, Tim. Bye, everybody. See you soon. Stay safe.
Bye, Ellie. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys. Thanks, Kirk.
You got it.
Hey, Mike, I love your fire pit, by the way.
I want to be there.
There it is.
There they are, yeah.
Over.
Thank you, Roseanne.
That's great.